For several weeks now we've been reading about how Savitri was guided to silence the mind completely, and how she came into a state of complete silence and identification with that silence and vastness. She's aware of some high, surpassing reality from which flashes of truth come down, which seems sometimes to use her body to speak amazing things that she could never have thought. And she's aware that the power of universal nature is just keeping her body going, doing the usual things that it has always done. But she herself is not directing any of that. There's no mind thinking, there's no will deciding. She's just observing. Observing not with the mind, but with a pure perception. That's the only capacity or function that's left of her individual being. And she has the feeling that at any time, at any moment, this whole individual being could be completely dissolved. But it isn't dissolved, it's kept, it's maintained. And then, last week at the top of page 554, we were told that this unmoving, wide, spiritual space in which her awareness remains tranquil and bare, something comes in, a thought which gets expressed as a voice. And this thought is not like any ordinary thought. It's not speaking to the mind, it's not speaking to the heart, it's coming directly to communicate with that center of pure perception which she has become. So the last 3 lines that we read last time, they say, there was no motion in this inner world. All was a still and even infinity. In her, the unseen, the unknown waited his hour. So that's the state that she is in, a kind of silent, receptive waiting. So now I'm going to read on from there. But now she sat by sleeping Shraddhavan, awake within, and the enormous night surrounded her with the unknowables vast. A voice began to speak from her own heart that was not hers, yet mastered thought and sense. As it spoke, all changed within her and without. All was, all lived. She felt all being one. The world of unreality ceased to be. There was no more a universe built by mind, convicted as a structure or a sign. A spirit, a being, saw created things and cast itself into unnumbered forms and was what it saw and made. All now became an evidence of one stupendous truth, a truth in which negation had no place, a being and a living consciousness, a stark and absolute reality. There, the unreal could not find a place. The sense of unreality was slain. There, all was conscious, made of the infinite. All had a substance of eternity. Yet, this was the same indecipherable. It seemed to cast from it universe like a dream, vanishing forever into an original void. But this was no more some vague, ubiquitous point, or a cipher of vastness in unreal naught. It was the same, but now no more seemed far to the living clasp of her recovered soul. It was herself. It was the self of all. It was the reality of existing things. It was the consciousness of all that lived and felt and saw. It was timelessness and time. It was the bliss of formlessness and form. It was all love and the one beloved's arms. It was sight and thought in one all-seeing mind. It was joy of being on the peaks of God. She passed beyond time into eternity, slipped out of space and became the infinite. Her being rose into unreachable heights and found no end of its journey in the self. It plunged into the unfathomable deeps and found no end to the silent mystery that held all world within one lonely breast, yet harbored all creation's multitudes. We'll start on this side.
But now she sat by sleeping Shraddhavan, awake within and the enormous night, surrounded her with the unknowable vast.
So she sat by sleeping Shraddhavan, but she is awake within herself, and she feels all around her the enormous night surrounding her with this vastness of the unknowable reality. That is what she has become aware of now. Suresh.
The voice began to speak from her own heart. That was not as that mastered thought and sense.
Yes. So she hears this voice speaking from her heart. She doesn't recognize this voice as her own voice, but this voice seems to be controlling thought and sense. The sense impression, the thoughts. And the Sri Aurobindo doesn't tell us what this voice said, but he tells us the effect that it has on Savitri. Chandra, you will read?
As it spoke all changed within her and without. All was, all lived, she felt, all being on. The wood of unreality caused to
Ceased.
to be. There was no more a universe built by mind, contracted as a
Structure.
structure or a sign. A spirit, a being, saw created things,
Created things.
and cast itself into unnumbered forms, and was what it saw and mad. All now became an evidence of one. Stupendous truth, a truth in which negation had no place. A being and a living consciousness, a star and our absolute reality.
Thank you. What she'd been feeling before, what she had been perceiving before, was that to this silenced mind, all the appearances of the world, of the universe, seemed unreal. She was aware of some kind of absolute reality, but that couldn't be grasped by the mind and the senses. So she passed through that period for quite a long time. This is also Sri Aurobindo's own experience, that for several months he lived with that sense of the unreality of everything. The body just went on working. When he had to make speeches, the speeches came, but inside himself he was absolutely silent, without will, without intention. Just whatever needed to be done was done. And there was this sense that there is a reality, but that reality is unknowable. But now, when this voice comes, all that changes for Savitri. As it spoke, everything changed within her, inside her, and also the world outside her. Instead of that sense of absolutely silent, unmoving state and these shadowy, unreal figures moving in the world, instead she feels that everything really exists. Everything is alive. And all this is one being. No? That world of unreality ceases to exist. It's not there anymore. There's no more this appearance of a universe that has been built by mind, and because it's been built by mind, it is unreal. That just goes away. This idea that the universe, these appearances, are convicted as a structure, some construction of the mind, or a sign, a symbol of something. Instead, she feels that there's a spirit, a being, which is watching, observing all these created things, and it is itself projecting itself into all these forms, these unnumbered forms. There are so many forms in the universe that we can't possibly count them. No? But that reality was projecting itself into every one of those unnumbered forms. And it was what it saw and made. All these appearances became to her consciousness expressions and forms of that one reality. Everything that one could possibly perceive now became an evidence, a sign, a proof of one stupendous truth. Something that's stupendous, it's so big and powerful that one can hardly grasp it. No? A truth, this truth which she now perceives, is there has no place for negation, for something that says no, that doesn't exist, that's not real. This truth, negation has no place. This truth is saying yes to everything. It is a being and a living consciousness, and at the same time it's an absolutely stark, absolute reality. It is. There's no unreality anywhere in it. Everything is real. Everything exists, everything is living, and that one consciousness is pervading everything.
This unreality is not illusion, same meaning of illusion, Maya?
Yes, it's the sense of, and that is what Sri Aurobindo has explained. It was his own first major spiritual experience, that when the mind falls totally silent, it gets this overpowering sense that everything which it is used to perceiving and thinking is unreal. It perceives that there's a reality which is beyond the mind, which can't be grasped by the mind. He called that his nirvana experience, or the experience of the silent Brahman. And sometimes he calls it the experience of the unknowable. But then he's explained somewhere else that when we say that it is unknowable, we mean that it's unknowable to the mind. The mind cannot grasp it. But there is some spiritual reality in us which can know it, can even identify with it. No? So that is what is happening now to Savitri. And this was Sri Aurobindo's experience, what he experienced while he was in Alipur jail. It came to him sometime after he was imprisoned. He was imprisoned for a whole year, and when he was released in May 1909, this was the thing that he spoke about. He said, this is the essence of Hinduism. This is the essence of the Indian tradition, that everything is real because it is inhabited by that one reality. And the feeling of unknowableness and maya and unreality, that is an experience of the mind when it's going beyond itself. For some time it may have that experience, but then it becomes aware of this indwelling reality that casts itself into these unnumbered forms and was what it saw. The one supreme consciousness is observing everything in the universe, and it is identified with it. It is what it saw and made. It inhabits all this. So in that truth, negation had no place. She experiences the presence of this being, this living consciousness, this stark and absolute reality, that all this is real because the real has made it, has seen it, conceived it, made it, and is inhabiting it. No? Ganga Lakshmi, would you read?
They, the unreal, could not find the place. The sense of unreality was slain. The all was conscious, made of the infinite. All had a substance of eternity.
So it's as if a complete reversal of that other experience, that the absolute was something ungraspable and everything in the universe is unreal. No? Now, in this universe which she sees now, the unreal could not find a place. There's no room for anything unreal. No? The sense of unreality is slain, it's killed, destroyed. Instead, she feels and experiences that this whole universe is conscious. It's made of the infinite. Everything, all the substance, all the different forms of matter, of gross matter, subtle matter, all the substance, everything has a substance of eternity, of what is beyond the manifestation.
Yet this was the same indecipherable. It seemed to cast from its universe like a dream, vanishing forever into an original void. But this was no more some vague, ubiquitous point or a cipher of vastness in unreal knowledge.
Yes. She says this being, this consciousness, she realizes that it is the same that she couldn't grasp, the same reality that she couldn't grasp before. The same indecipherable. Something that is indecipherable. It's written in a way that you can't read it. That you can't grasp its meaning. So it's that same strange reality. And in the same way, it seems to cast universe from it like a dream. It is beyond universe. As far as that reality is concerned, the universe is a dream. And it, in its reality, it is vanishing forever. It can't be grasped. It's going off into this original emptiness. But now it's not, she's not experiencing it in the same way. It was no more some vague, ubiquitous point. a point, just a single dimensionless spot in the vastness. But ubiquitous means it was everywhere, something that's ubiquitous. It is everywhere. So she had the feeling that there is this one vague point that's everywhere. Or another way she felt it is like a kind of zero, a cipher of vastness, emptiness, in some unreal nothingness. That's how she was experiencing it before. But now it's different. Perry.
It was the same, but not no more seen before, to the living clasp of her recovered soul. It was herself, it was the self of her, it was the reality of existing things, it was the consciousness of all that lived and lived and saw. It was timelessness and time. It was the bliss of formlessness and form.
Thank you. So it's that same unknowable reality that she was experiencing before, but now it no longer feels empty, and it no longer feels ungraspable. On the contrary, now it feels as if her soul has come back, her own living conscious soul, and that she can embrace that reality. It was no longer far away from the living clasp of her recovered soul. In fact, it is her self, her true self, and at the same time, it is the self of everything. It's the reality of everything that exists. It is the consciousness of everything that lives and feels and sees. And it is combining time and timelessness. It is both. It's beyond time, and at the same time it is filling time. Time only exists because of that reality. It is the bliss, the intense delight of formlessness before the manifestation, beyond the manifestation, and at the same time the bliss of all the forms that are in the universe. It combines both these things, timelessness and time, beyond the universe, the transcendence, and the universe itself, and all the forms, the individual forms. Praveen, would you read?
It was all love, and the one below its arm. It was sight and thought in one all-seeing mind. It was joy of being on the peaks of God.
Thank you. So all these things that we think of as the ultimate, that we long for, all love, and the sense of one beloved embracing us all. It was that. And at the same time it was all consciousness, sight and thought in one all-seeing mind, one all-embracing consciousness. And it is the joy of existence on the very highest levels of God. So Savitri sees all this, and this leads her to a new experience of herself. Gentleman at the back. Yeah.
She passed beyond time into eternity, slipped out of space and became the huge night. The wheel rose into unreachable heights and found no end of its journey in the self. It plunged into the unfathomable deeps and found no end to the silent mystery that held all world within one lonely place. Yet, number all creation's attitudes.
Yes. So this is what happens to Savitri. She slips beyond time into that transcendent state, into eternity. She slips out of space and is identified with the infinite. It's as if her being rises up into unreachable heights, so high that however far it goes, it doesn't come to any end, comes to no end of its journey in this one self. She's still within that one self. No? And her being can also plunge into the unfathomable deeps. Something that's unfathomable is so deep that you can't measure how deep it is. However deep she goes, she finds no end to this silent mystery. This mystery that's holding the whole world as if in one heart, in one lonely breast. The one is one without a second, all alone. No? And yet, within itself, it is containing all the multitudes, all the many, 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 many uncountable beings who are there in the universe. All creations, multitudes. To harbor something means to hold within itself. A harbor is a safe place where the ships can be safe from the storms of the ocean. If we harbor something, we're keeping it safe within ourselves. So that one reality is holding all the multitudes, all the different forms, beings, forces, and movements of the creation in itself, in its own heart. So it continues with Savitri's experience of herself. Joel.
She was all vastness and one measureless point. She was a height beyond heights, a depth beyond depth. She lived in the everlasting and was all that harbors death and bears the dwelling hours. All contraries were true in one huge spirit, surpassing measure, change, and circumstance.
Thank you. So she's able, also her being identifies with that vastness. She becomes all vastness. She still feels like a point, but this is a point that's become so vast it can't be measured. She's become so high beyond anything that we can think of as a height. She's become deep beyond those unfathomable deeps. And she feels that she's living in the everlasting existence, the one eternal being. and at the same time she feels that she is everything in our mortal world, everything that harbors death. We are mortal beings. We are in the grip of death. We're carrying death within us. So she's feeling one with the everlasting. At the same time, she feels she's one with everything that is mortal, everything that bears the wheeling hours, the cycles of time. And in that state, she realizes that everything that seems to us like oppositions, all contraries, they are all true in that one huge spirit, which goes beyond all measures, beyond all limits. It's beyond all change, beyond all circumstance. So in that vast reality and truth, all contraries, all opposites can find their place. Sergei.
An individual, one with cosmic self, in the heart of the transcendence miracle, and the secret of the world personality was the creator and the Lord of all. Mind was a single, innumerable book upon himself and all that he became. Life was his drama, and the vast, the stage, the universe was his body, God, its soul. All was one single immense reality, all its innumerable phenomena.
Innumerable, uncountable. So what she realizes, that the supreme reality is an individual who is united with the self, the soul of the universe. And that is contained in the heart of the transcendent. It's a kind of miracle. That is the secret, that one individual. That is the cosmic spirit. It is the creator and the Lord of all. And mind is the mind of that cosmic spirit. It's a single look of that one cosmic individual, but it's looking through all these individual minds. It's innumerable. It's seeing from all these uncountable number of individual standpoints. And what he's looking at is himself and everything that he becomes, all the different forms and shapes and personalities he takes on in time. So all the activity of life, it's his drama. He's the author and the actor, and it's all played out in his bodies. And this vastness is the stage for his drama. The universe, the physical universe, was his body, the body of that cosmic spirit. And God is the soul of that physical universe. So everything that can possibly be perceived, it's all one single immense reality. And everything that is here in the universe is its innumerable phenomenon. Phenomenons are appearances or small creations of something, or exteriorizations or projections of something. So everything here are expressions individual expressions of that one single immense reality. Everything that can possibly exist is an expression, an individualization, projection of that. So they are innumerable, they can't be counted. What a tremendous, overwhelming experience. Sri Aurobindo will elaborate it a bit more in the next paragraph, but perhaps we'll stop here for today. But what is important is that this realization, this powerful experience, is the culmination, the high point, the result of Savitri's yoga. This is the coming to the end of Savitri's yoga. In the next book, there's just one canto, and it's the Book of Death, and it's very short. It's just 3 pages, 4 pages, 180 lines, less than. It's the part of the whole poem that Sri Aurobindo revised less than all the rest, but he did add 18 very, very important lines in which he describes death, this power of death that Savitri is going to have to face in the next books. There's book 9, the Book of Eternal Night. When death takes Satyavan's soul out of his body and carries him away, Savitri is able to follow because of the realizations that she's had in book 7. She's able to follow. And we shall see through book 9 and then book 10 and book 11, the first part of book 11, how each of the realizations that we've seen described through book 7, the different cantos of book 7, those realizations get tested by this challenging force, to find out how real is her realization, how powerful is it, how far has she integrated this into her whole being. So the culminating realization is this realization of the cosmic spirit and the cosmic consciousness. There's a beautiful description from line 187 to the end of the canto of the cosmic consciousness. But I don't want us to rush it. We'll look at it carefully and in detail next time. So now we can go back to page 554 at the break and read these lines.
Shraddhavan, just
yes, any questions anybody's got? Yes, come.
You tell, sorry, about book 11 and book 7. You have a connection with the unreal reality, but 11 I like so much.
No, what I mean is that through book 8, 9, 10, and the first part of book 11, she is facing this negation that says that you can't keep Satyavan alive. The soul can't be immortal in this material universe. So that whole process, it tests all the successive realizations that she has experienced through the course of Book 7, the different cantos of Book 7. So as we come to these points, we'll remember that, she's able to do and say and understand this because of what happened in Canto 2, or Canto 3, or Canto 4, so on. Yeah, it's interesting to see that worked out. Yes. So we'll read from the break on page 554. But now she sat by sleeping Shraddhavan, awake within, and the enormous night surrounded her with the unknowables vast. A voice began to speak from her own heart that was not hers, yet mastered thought and sense. As it spoke, all changed within her and without. All was, all lived. She felt all being one. The world of unreality ceased to be. There was no more a universe built by mind, convicted as a structure or a sign. A spirit, a being, saw created things and cast itself into unnumbered forms, and was what it saw and made. All now became an evidence of one stupendous truth, a truth in which negation had no place. A being and a living consciousness, a stark and absolute reality. There the unreal could not find a place. The sense of unreality was slain. There all was conscious, made of the infinite. All had a substance of eternity. Yet this was the same indecipherable. It seemed to cast from it universe like a dream, vanishing forever into an original void. But this was no more some vague, ubiquitous point, or a cipher of vastness in unreal naught. It was the same, but now no more seemed far to the living clasp of her recovered soul. It was herself. It was the self of all. It was the reality of existing things. It was the consciousness of all that lived and felt and saw. It was timelessness and time. It was the bliss of formlessness and form. It was all love and the one beloved's arms. It was sight and thought in one all-seeing mind. It was joy of being on the peaks of God. She passed beyond time into eternity, slipped out of space and became the infinite. Her being rose into unreachable heights and found no end of its journey in the self. It plunged into the unfathomable deeps and found no end to the silent mystery that held all world within one lonely breast, yet harbored all creation's multitudes. She was all vastness and one measureless point. She was a height beyond heights, a depth beyond depths. She lived in the everlasting and was all that harbors death and bears the wheeling hours. All contraries were true in one huge spirit, surpassing measure, change, and circumstance. An individual, one with cosmic self, in the heart of the transcendence miracle and the secret of world personality, was the Creator and the Lord of all. Mind was a single, innumerable look upon himself and all that he became. Life was his drama, and the vast a stage. The universe was his body, God its soul. All was one single, immense reality, all its innumerable phenomenon.